Welcome to Love Byte.
Hello and welcome to the Love Byte platform where we share real stories in an interesting manner. My story is very sad, but I do not think that I am able to convey the same level of bitterness and betrayal that some of the other writers and submitters have experienced. My story, of course, is sad but also perhaps gives a different perspective that might be worth listening to. I am not sure why I am writing about events that took place so many years ago, but maybe it is just a way to show people that good things happen with time. And time and patience does seem to heal most things. I know this is a long post, but I think the history is important to know so people understand what happened. And that generates my question and request for advice. Based on this, am I crazy to try this again, and is it worthwhile at 60 years of age? I met my wife and we were together for almost 10 years, which includes 7 years of marriage. We have 2 children who are now fully grown and have lives of their own. My wife and I met on a blind date and it was awkward the entire night. My wife is an attractive woman with a vivacious personality. Me, on the other hand, am somewhat reserved and would not probably be considered as a head-turner. I am not that bad on the eyes, but do not in any way claim to be a great heartbreaker. I am also on the quiet side, and my wife always has been the person that people noticed at a party or an event. She also has a kind heart and is very empathetic to people and always looks for the good. Strangely enough, she seemed to like me and our relationship grew. Finally, we got married and began to build our life together. Our life was actually going very well. We had a nice home, good finances, supportive families, good friends, and our kids were doing well. But as with many of these stories, there is a catalyst that can change everything. Our catalyst was a pregnancy. We had 2 young kids at the time and wanted to go for a 3rd child to have an even larger and happier family. We never had too many concerns in the bedroom and we quickly had number 3 on the way. I was elated when my wife told me the news, and we waited about 3 months before we told the rest of our families about the new addition. During the next 3 months we were busy with planning for the nursery, working with our kids on getting ready for the new baby, looking at finances, etc. It is perhaps the saddest day of my life when my wife called me to tell me that something was wrong with the baby. We got her to the hospital and unfortunately and tragically my wife had a miscarriage at the 6-month mark. We were both traumatized and the trip back home next day was absolute silence and sadness. My wife went to bed that night and did not come out of that room for the next 3 days. She was absolutely overcome with sadness and depression. For some reason she also believed that she had failed me as my wife. I told her again and again that this was an act of God, she did not do anything wrong, and we could try again when the time was right. But she did not believe me and still continued to blame herself for the whole situation and sunk into a depression. It took about 6 months, but she appeared to be coming out of her funk and seemed to be getting back to her normal self. We were both doing well with the kids, she seemed to have her personality back, and we were talking about the future. She also started to exercise and get back into shape. She really did look incredible and I did enjoy giving her compliments and telling her how much I loved her. During this time, she also talked to me about getting a part-time job. It was not so much about the money, but more of a way for her to get out of the house and stay involved. I told her that was a great idea and encouraged her to think about what she wanted to do and to go for it. To my surprise, she got a job as a waitress and bartender at a restaurant right down the street from us. She has a degree in business but did not want to get a white-collar job. She thought the hours and responsibilities would be too much with our home and family, but this would get her up and moving. She would be able to earn some money for herself and feel like she was contributing. Plus, she said that she needed to work and talk with adults, and she felt this would get her out of her isolation at home. Once again, I told her that was great news and she should go for it. Now, I noted earlier that my wife is an attractive woman. I should also add that she is a voluptuous woman and was looking really great with her level of fitness and weight loss. She has never had a problem with attracting interest from men, but she also has always been loyal to me and I never had reason to doubt her. She started her job and was doing well. She worked 2/3 nights per week and usually worked on a Friday or Saturday. I was somewhat uncomfortable with her work outfits because she wore clothing that accentuated her figure. It was tasteful, but I admit that I wished she would be more conservative. She laughed at me on this and told me it was a great way to bring in more tips and perhaps her outfits would spur more romantic interest on my part. The owner of the restaurant was a good man and ran a good business. He was fair with his workers and his family also all worked there. His son, to be honest, was somewhat of an arrogant jerk. He had been born into wealth and made no bones about living a nice lifestyle. He was about the same age as my wife and I must admit he was a very good-looking guy. He was married but had no children yet. His wife is a lovely and wonderful person also. She also worked at the restaurant and handled the books. The son handled all of the catering and special events. At least, he was supposed to do that. My understanding is that he was somewhat lazy and constantly dumped his responsibilities off on his family and coworkers. What he really liked to do was lift weights, work out, drive around in his fancy car, live off his family, and basically talk and brag about how great he was with women. I am not sure how his wife dealt with all of this. He was admittedly a flashy guy, but the guy did not impress me in the least. I could tell from the first time I met him that he was not much more than a big mouth windbag. My wife several times had commented to me several times that the guy was very good looking in an exciting way, but he was an arrogant toe rag, and she could not stand him. But she had to work with him and kept her mouth shut to get along. She did work with him on a consistent basis, and they then began to have some type of friendship forming. I was not overly concerned but did tell her that this guy was trouble and she should be careful around him. During the next several months my wife did begin to act peculiar. She kept a close eye on her phone, claimed she had to work late, and began to be absent for long periods of time, claiming that she was shopping or was running errands. She also began to ignore me to some extent, and I also thought she was not as attentive to the kids as she had been in the past. My wife is a good mother, but she seemed to be impatient at this time and had no concern with turning over more of the responsibilities to me. It was a challenge since I also work full-time and am the primary breadwinner of the family. I did tell her of my concern, but she told me things were going okay and I was seeing problems where there were not any. One night my wife and I were alone and it was fairly late. I made a move on her and she shut me down cold. I asked her what the problem was, and with that she started crying and shaking. I asked her what the problem was and then received the shock of my life. My wife told she had been seeing the owner's son for almost 6 months, the relationship had turned sexual, she loved him, we were done, and she was going to leave me to move in with him. She also told me that she had been deeply unhappy since the miscarriage and felt that something in our marriage had died. She needed a fresh start and she needed to be free to live her life. She also told me that she loved this guy and he could make her happy. I was obviously pretty shook up and asked her to reconsider. She told me it was too late for that and would be moving in with her new boyfriend into an apartment they had secured. I asked her about the kids and she told me that it would be best if they stayed with me in the house to maintain a good home and she would be there to see them. It is an understatement to say that I was absolutely shocked and flabbergasted at what had taken place. My wife told me that she did not understand the surprise since she thought I was well aware of her unhappiness with our marriage and the miscarriage had been the final nail in the proverbial coffin. I was not pleased when I learned who she had a relationship with. It is one thing to get the complete shafting from your wife and another to find out she was ditching you for a guy who was really a dirtbag. I do not want to make a generality, but there does seem to be some truth that so many women are attracted to guys like this. I am not sure if it was his looks, flashy lifestyle, or his big mouth. But she apparently was interested in him and it took off from there. I was also shocked that she had been involved with him for 6 months without my knowing. They apparently had been having sex in his car, the restaurant, hotels, his house, our home when nobody was there, etc. It was a real betrayal and I was deeply hurt. But I thought about what I would do and maintained my perspective and composure. What followed was several weeks of tears, sadness, cajoling, and really just a whole lot of crap. My family, and especially my dad, was furious and began saying terrible things about her. My wife's side of the family was also upset with the situation but did not display the same level of animosity and bitterness that my side did. I actually had to intervene with my father and ask him to stop with the vitriolic insults against my wife. She was still the mother of his son's children and he needed to show her respect as a grandfather. My father actually agreed and commended me on my approach to this whole situation. I told him that I did not believe there was any benefit for me by seeking revenge on my soon-to-be ex-wife. She was the mother of my children and I would need to have an amicable relationship with her for the sake of our kids. Do not get me wrong. I would have loved to be an SOB but thought long and hard about it. I think that I made the correct choice and in retrospect would have done the same thing. As I said, it was a rough couple of weeks, but she did move out and into an apartment with this guy. She did see her children and tried to be active in their lives. I also felt terrible for the wife of this guy and she was mortified by what had taken place. She did leave the restaurant to get another job and did file for divorce. I would see her in the local grocery store on occasion and always wished her well. She was originally from Pennsylvania and eventually moved back to her home. I understand she did get remarried to a solid man and now has a good life and children. I wish her only the best. There is no question in my mind that her splitting with this guy is the best thing that ever happened to her. The divorce itself went smoothly. She did get some money out of me due to the division of assets. I did agree to pay some alimony support for a short period of time, which I think ended at 6 months. To me it was a cheap way to get out of the situation. In fact, I probably would have agreed to any financial demand she would have made in order to be done with the situation. I was retained as the primary custodial parent and she had 50/50 visitation. I told her that she was always free to stop and see her children. She did do that on many occasions and things appeared to be somewhat stable. I also think she liked to see me when she came to visit the kids, but maybe that was wishful thinking on my part. My wife did not make a lot of money, but did make a small child support payment each month. To her credit, she did her best and never missed a payment when it came to her children. In retrospect, there is no doubt in my mind that my wife was going through some type of personal crisis due to the miscarriage and the aftermath of it. I am not some great prize, but there is no way my wife in her right mind would have done what she did. But I was powerless and there was not much I could do. The day we signed the divorce papers to make it final was surreal. Things had been amicable, but it was still tough. We met at her attorney's office and it was a sad affair for me. I was saddened that she seemed so happy about the situation and she was there with her dirtbag boyfriend. She almost seemed giddy about it, which really shocked me. We had been together for many years and had a family together. This was the only time I ever felt like she disrespected me during the whole divorce, but I let it roll off because there was nothing left to prove. The marriage was over and we needed to move forward. When I signed the papers, I did see some regret in her eyes. I do think she had a look of shock on her face since I remember what I said to her. I had thought about it and had already decided what I was going to say. I must admit that I am proud of what I said and how well it came off. I am not an actor, but on this day, I did have a flair for the dramatic. I had written it down and practiced it until I had it down, and this is what I said. I am of course sad about this. I thought we had a good life and were a good team. I apologize to you if you think I failed you because I was not able to bring you the happiness you wanted and you thought somebody else would give you a better chance at happiness. I do think the miscarriage had a lot more to do with this than we realize. When tragedies take place, people either get closer and stronger or there is separation and loss. I am sad and find it ironic that what should have been a happy experience for us is what destroyed us in the end. But that is in the past now. I want you to have a happy life and we can work together to give our kids the happiest and most stable life we can. The room was quiet when I said this. Her face looked stark white and I did see regret in her eyes. With that, I got up, shook her hand, wished her well, said goodbye, and her attorney told me he would send me a copy of the papers. Things went okay at first. She was living with this guy, but within several months chinks began to appear in their relationship. He apparently drank too much, was pretty much shiftless, lived off his family, and really was not much of a man. He also apparently had a wandering eye and was already lining up his next conquest. She was apparently a younger girl who worked in another restaurant which was also owned by his father. Of interest is that I continued to order food from the original establishment. The owner would always greet me when I came in for my order and always had a look of embarrassment on his face. I would never stay in the place because that would have been awkward. My ex-wife was working there and was living with his son. If you toss in that he deserted his wife also, the owner was not pleased. He was a family man and told me once that he did not understand where he went wrong with his son. Of course, and to no surprise, things began to go downhill with this new, exciting power couple. They were fighting all of the time and things were not going well for my ex-wife. I think my ex-wife was seeing that perhaps I was not that bad of an option and things are not always greener on the other side. With me she had a solid man who put her and the kids first. I was a good husband and perhaps she had made a really poor decision. She did call me several times to lament about her life, but I told her that I was not the person to talk with about this. She answered that I had been her best friend and she could always talk to me. I told her that had been true, but things had changed and I did not feel comfortable being part of the discussion and she needed to work things out on her own with her new partner. I did not want to be involved in her relationships. She did agree, but I think that I could sense some hurt and regret in her voice when she hung up after I told her this. One night she had the kids over at her apartment with her dirtbag boyfriend to have a sleepover and watch some movies. That evening I had an upset call from her. Apparently, this guy had drank too much and was frustrated that the kids did not want to watch one of his shows. I am not sure what the show was, but the kids apparently had no interest. So, he got mad and slapped my youngest daughter because he thought she was being snotty. This was a hard slap and left a mark on her cheek. So, I get a call and went right over there. My first inclination was to call the cops and maybe I should have. But I did go over there to get my kids. I took my kids and left. I told him that I heard anything else from him about this, my next call would be to the cops and then he would have real trouble. I do admit that I got some pleasure out of telling my ex-wife. And, so this is what you left me for? She did not say anything but did hang her head. I think she was ashamed at what had taken place. I am not sure if that meant she regretted the divorce, but I do think she realized what she had done and was regretful. Lo and behold, later that night I get a knock at the door and there she is sobbing and was very upset. I did let her come in and she told me that she had broken up with her boyfriend and wanted to come home. Now, I thought long and hard for several minutes and told her that I loved her and we had history, but I could not do that. With everything that had taken place, I did not think it was a good idea for her to come back, and there were just too many sad memories. I would never have left the mother of my children alone on the street. She did come in and she did call her parents. I took her there to stay. My former father-in-law met me at the door and thanked me. He told me that I had always been a good man and a good husband. He appreciated that I had put the kids first and did look after the safety of his daughter as my ex-wife. I did tell him that I would always love his daughter. Maybe things did not go the way we wanted, but I would not let harm come to her. To this day, I am proud of what I did on this night and what I decided to do to protect my kids and in the end my ex-wife. She lived at her parents' house for about a year until she could back on her feet. She did get a good job and moved into her own place. She was always a good mother and her old vitality and spark returned. It was not perfect, but there was some sense of normalcy. She did have a string of relationships that did not go anywhere, and I think she was taken advantage of several times. Several times she would say to me that I was the best relationship she ever had and nobody else could compare. Maybe that was a lot of cheap talk, but I did like to hear it. All that being said, nothing romantic happened again between us and I retained a cordial and respectful relationship with her. I could have been with her again if I wanted but would not take that step. In my heart, I wanted to but was basically scared of being hurt again. During this time, I had dated several women but nothing serious from the relationship perspective. Several of them wanted more from me, but I was not going to go there. I was focused on work, my kids, and had really no interest in another marriage or a long-term relationship. There were just too many bad memories and I decided that going solo was the best route for me. The years did fly by. My kids did well, attended college, had good careers, got married, and started families. I would see my ex-wife at family events on a regular basis. She would always ask me if I was seeing anybody, and it would always come around if there was still a chance for us to get back together. I always told her no because in life some things stick and you cannot go away from them. She would always look sad and told me that her decision to leave me was the worst decision and mistake she ever made. She told me there is not a day that goes by when she does not think about what if. She also told me it was especially hard for her at events like weddings, birthday parties, and other family events. She told me that the toughest days for her from this perspective was at the funerals for her mother and father when they died. She was greatly saddened when she saw me there, but I was not there as her husband and partner. She knew that I was a strong man and good husband to her. But on these days she felt alone and had felt great regret. She also felt this way at the weddings for both of our children. She thought they would have been great days that we would have shared together. She asked me if I ever felt the same way. My answer has been that the experience was sad for me, but I decided to move forward and not look back. I always felt that her regret was ironic since she was so sure that true happiness was with a new boyfriend. We are now pushing 60 and I was thinking about hanging it up at work and moving somewhere warm or at least for the cold months. My kids support me and do love their mother. The last time I talked to my ex-wife before moving was at a birthday party for one of our grandchildren. She asked to speak to me alone and we stepped outside. She then became very emotional and upset. She always thought there was a chance that we would get back together. My moving away would signify the absolute end and that she had experienced a lifetime of regret for having failed as a wife. I told her so many years had gone past and that she should not feel that way. I had nothing but respect and admiration for her. She then asked if she could potentially come visit me. I told her that I did not know but would think about it. I admit that every single time I looked into her beautiful green eyes, my heart would melt. On this day she looked exceptionally beautiful to me and the years had been very kind to her. On this day, I must admit that regardless of what had taken place before, I never felt more intense love for her than I did on this day at this moment. At this point in my life, I thought that maybe I would welcome having a relationship with her again. I would not get remarried, but what did I really have to lose at this point? She did make me happy at one time and my love for her had never went away. At this point of time in our lives, maybe we can go forward. Update. I have been living in the Carolinas for the winter and my ex-wife did come to see me. Crazy I know, but all of the old feelings are still there. She stayed at my place and we went and did many things together. I am pleased to report that maybe we are older but learned that we still do well together with that special time. She was there for a weekend but it stretched into 2 weeks and then into a month. One night she started to cry and sob because of what happened literally years ago. She told me that the past several weeks had brought her great happiness and she was so sorry for what had happened. She told me that she constantly thought about what if and if she had wasted her life looking for some type of utopian relationship that cannot exist. I told her that was all in the past and maybe the time had come for us to move on and reconsider having a future together. I told her that I always loved her, my feelings for her had never died, and maybe she would like to come down and be with me permanently. I told her that I was not ready for marriage again, but did it really make a difference at this point in our lives? She agreed, actually never left my home and things have been going great. The kids had a look of absolute shock on their faces when we told them, but they were also very happy for us. My youngest daughter though told me she was not really surprised because she knew that my love for her mother had never died and she had a feeling that things were not over. Some people reading this may think I am crazy for doing this again after so many years, but at this point in our lives there is only love and respect. What happened so many years ago is in the past. Now, when I see my wife, and I admit that I always considered her to be my wife, I only feel love and affection. I think things will get even better and hopefully we will have good years ahead as we head into old age. She really made a bad decision, but that is in the past. I think we both faced the consequences, but I look forward to life and moving forward. Perhaps it is hokey, but one thing is important to me. I always thought we were writing a book together but was saddened that we would never get a chance to finish it. I am pleased that we now have another chance to finish writing that book and including the final chapters. Would my wife cheat again? I do not think she would at this stage of our lives. But age and experience has shown me that all people are a mixed bag. There is good and bad in all of us and one action or decision does not make or break a person. I have regrets also. My regret is that I always loved my wife and I let sad feelings dictate what I decided to do. Maybe I should have just recognized the fact that she is a human being and made a bad decision. Perhaps I should have given this a shot earlier and things might have been better. I do think about what if also, but am glad we have this second chance. With that, let me conclude and hopefully I have a perspective that some of you have been able to consider. Thank you for watching my video. Hope you have enjoyed it. Please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing for more content.